Welcome to the third episode in the Psychology of Losing mini-series. Now, if you're just checking out the series straight away right now, what I'm going to encourage you to do is go back to the first two episodes, watch those first before you get to this one. Now, in this particular episode, we're going to be building on the last couple episodes, and we're going to be talking about the resentment towards losing, or the pain from losing actually comes from the addiction to winning. And they're pairs of opposites in your mind, and we have to learn to deal and manage both. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to learn how to manage losing. You have to learn to manage winning to learn how to manage losing. This is a crucial step that a lot of traders overlook. They think they can, get really elated when they win without getting depressed when they lose. But they come as pairs of opposites in your mind, which I'm going to explore in today's episode. Now, for those of you who don't know who I am, first and foremost, welcome to the channel. My name is Bailouni, and I'm the founder of Master Your Trading Mindset, which is an education and performance coaching business. Now, we work with retail traders and we help them gain consistency in their trading, we help them gain funding in their trading, and we help them overcome the psychological roadblocks that hold them back from success in their trading in their life. If you haven't already gotten a copy of our free Bulletproof Your Mindset tool, I'm going to encourage you to go in there and download one right now. There are only 30 copies available per week because I personally follow up every single person to ensure they get value. Excellent. Now, when we talk about the pain from losing, you have to understand that in our mind, we have pairs of opposites, right? What is hot unless we contrast it with cold? What is good unless we contrast it with bad? What is painful unless we contrast it with what's pleasurable? So our senses and our perception works on contrast. And we're constantly contrasting things to ensure we have sensation and perception and those types of things. So when we talk about losing and winning are two pairs in our mind. When we lose, we have in our mind an association because we're comparing it to a fantasy in that moment that we wish we won. The fantasy of winning is very pleasurable, therefore the loss is very painful. So I'm going to make a statement here that in our mind, the more pleasure you have associated to winning, which is the opposite of losing, the more pain you're going to have associated to losing. Because every time you lose, you don't get all the pleasure of winning, so the more painful losing is. And they come as pairs in our mind. Okay? So it's really important to recognize that the more addicted we are to winning, the more pleasure we associate with winning, the more of a fantasy of winning that we set in our mind, the more painful losing is. Now, I'm not trying to make losing good. I'm not trying to make winning bad. I'm just trying to help traders see them for what they actually are. Losing, like we talked about in the previous episode, has both advantage and disadvantage. And winning also has both advantage and disadvantage. And it's only when losing challenges our priorities and challenges what's most important to us do we label it bad. And we associate a lot of pain to it. And we compare it to subconsciously stored data we have in our mind of previous experiences. We label it bad, and we have that biochemical response of releasing all the pain substances, substance P, so on and so forth. And when we win, because it supports our priorities, it makes us feel good, we compare it to the subconsciously stored data of all the times we've won in the past and how pleasurable that was, and we have a biochemical response of releasing dopamine, oxytocin, all these feel-good chemicals, and we like winning. It feels good. But if we want to be successful, consistent, long-term traders, we have to transcend the addiction to winning. Because every trader recognizes that nobody actually knows what's going to happen in the next position. And if we're so addicted to winning in our mind, we're going to make irrational decisions that go away from our trading plan because we want the pleasure of winning. And I see so many traders that can't get over the immediate gratifying feeling of wanting to win, and as a result they pretty much throw their whole trading career away because they're not giving themselves permission to just execute on their processes. Now, a little bit of a side tangent here I want to explore. Executing on our processes every day and just showing up to the charts and forecasting and executing, that's boring compared to an overall fantasy of winning and having all this pleasurable feeling and banking all these big trades. So the more we create these fantasies in our head about how pleasurable winning is and how good it's going to be and how much money I'm going to make and, all the great things I'm going to get from it, the more boring the journey as a trader actually is. And it's really important to understand that the journey is actually quite boring day to day. It's just about executing on the high priority actions every day. There's a great investor out there who said that if it's boring, you're probably on track. But it's our addiction to winning and the pleasure of winning that stops us from being able to go off and execute every day on the boring high priority actions. Okay, so pairs of opposites in our mind. The more pleasure you associate to winning, the more pain you're going to associate to losing. It's really important to note. Now, there's no such thing as getting rid of the pain of losing and just having the pleasure of winning. That doesn't exist, because the pleasure of winning is contrasted to the pain of losing, and vice versa. There's a contrast going on in our perception. So what we actually have to do is we have to bring down our fantasy and addiction to winning for us to be able to see the benefits of actually losing, and so we can transcend the actual outcome like we've talked about in the previous couple of videos and stop setting these unrealistic expectations and actually get present with the market and realize that the outcome to me doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. What actually matters is me having a clearly defined edge and just consistently executing on that edge every day, even though it's very boring, but that's what will ultimately get me consistent results. Because it's consistency in processes that allow us to have consistency in results, and that ultimately reaps the rewards like funding and building a large income and those types of things. But we can't get there if we're addicted to winning, because it's the addiction to winning and the pleasure of winning that undermines us to be able to execute on the boring process every day. So one of the most important exercises and really aha moments I get with clients is helping them see the disadvantages and the risks of losing. The disadvantages and the risks of winning. I just want them to see that winning has both advantage and disadvantage. Winning has pleasure and also has pain. So I want clients to see that so they can stop being so addicted and setting expectations of having to win and having to have that outcome, so they can just execute on the process every day, the high priority actions every day. That's ultimately where the consistent profits come from. And the other thing that happens here is losing isn't all that painful anymore. Because the pain of losing comes from the addiction of winning and the pleasure associated with winning. The moment you bring that down and find the drawbacks to winning, and you see how it makes you complacent, you see how it takes away that drive, you see how that you don't actually grow because you're not making refinements and learning from those trades, you got to see the benefits of losing, which is that you get the accountability to grow and you get the accountability to learn, you go and make refinements in your plan. So I would just want you to make you aware of the pairs of opposites. The pain of losing comes from the pleasure and addiction to winning. You need to bring that down and you need to bring losing up and see them both as advantage and disadvantage. They both have advantage and disadvantage. You neutralize them, and that gives you permission to just execute on the high priority actions every day. And you'll now be inspired by your day because you're not comparing it to a fantasy of winning all the time. Because if we compare our two-sided day to a fantasy of winning, we're not going to be inspired by our day. We're going to be upset that our day doesn't live up to this hype and this fantasy we have in our mind. So cut those fantasies, find the drawbacks to winning, and stick to high priority action every day. Stick to your process of execution. Your days will be more inspiring, and you'll also minimize the pain of losing as well.